The ship touched down on Valara Prime with barely a whisper. Day stood at the viewport, watching the alien city sprawl before him like nothing he had ever seen. Towers of crystalline metal stretched into the purple sky, and vehicles moved through the air in perfect geometric patterns. Everything looked precise, calculated, and cold. He adjusted his diplomatic uniform and took a deep breath. This was humanity's first real chance to make an impression on the galactic stage. The Valerian Empire controlled dozens of star systems and had technology that made Earth's achievements look like children playing with stones. If this went well, humanity could gain access to trade routes, technology, and protection. If it went badly, Earth might remain isolated for generations. The airlock hissed open, and Day stepped out with his small team. A group of Valerans waited at the bottom of the ramp. They were tall and slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. Their eyes were large and dark, showing no emotion as they watched the humans approach. "Welcome to Valara Prime," one of them said in perfect English, though the voice carried no warmth. "I am Diplomatic Coordinator Mira. You will follow me to the palace." The journey through the city was silent. Day noticed that everything moved with mechanical efficiency. There were no street vendors, no random pedestrians, no chaos of any kind. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going and moved there directly. It was impressive, but unsettling. The palace was a massive structure that seemed to grow out of the ground itself. Inside, the halls were wide and decorated with geometric art that hurt to look at for too long. Everything was mathematical perfection. Day found himself missing the irregular beauty of Earth's architecture. They were brought to a vast reception hall where hundreds of Velerans had gathered. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat Empress Lyra. She wore robes of deep violet that flowed like liquid, and a crown of silver that seemed to float above her head. Her face was beautiful in an alien way, with sharp features and those same dark, unreadable eyes. Day and his team approached and bowed as they had been instructed. The Empress did not acknowledge them at first. Instead, a court official stepped forward and began reading from a data tablet. "The Valaran Empire recognizes the species known as humans. You have been granted this audience to present your case for trade relations. State your qualifications." Day had prepared a speech about Earth's resources and potential, but before he could begin, another Valaran official interrupted. "Forgive me, Empress, but I must question the wisdom of this meeting. Humans have barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Their technology is primitive, their world is divided into competing factions, and they have nothing of value to offer our empire. This is a waste of your time." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Day felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Getting angry would only prove their point. The Empress raised one slender hand, and silence fell instantly. "Let the humans speak." Day cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, members of the Valaran court, we know we are newcomers to the galactic community. Our technology may seem simple to you, but we are quick learners. We offer not just resources, but a different perspective. Sometimes the newest student asks questions that the master has forgotten to consider." It was not the speech he had prepared, but it felt right. Some of the Valarans looked mildly interested, though most still seemed dismissive. The Empress studied him for a long moment. "Different perspectives, an interesting claim, let us test it." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a complex, three-dimensional pattern of interconnected nodes and lines. "This is the endless theorem," she said. "It has occupied our greatest mathematical minds for 300 years. No one has found the solution. If humans truly offer different perspectives, perhaps you can see what we cannot." Day stared at the floating puzzle. It was incredibly complex, layers upon layers of mathematical relationships that shifted and changed. He had no formal training in alien mathematics. This was clearly a test designed to humble him, to show that humans were out of their depth. But as he looked at it, something nagged at his mind. The Valarans approached everything with pure logic, with computation and analysis. That was their strength. But humans thought differently. Humans looked for patterns, for intuition, for shortcuts that might not make logical sense at first. He walked closer to the display, circling it slowly. His team watched nervously. The entire court was silent, waiting for him to admit defeat. Then he saw it. Not through calculation, but through intuition. The pattern was not meant to be solved logically. It was meant to be seen as a whole. It was like one of those old optical illusions from Earth, where you had to relax your eyes and stop trying so hard. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the controls. The Empress nodded. Day reached out and began manipulating the display. Instead of trying to calculate the relationships between nodes, he simply started collapsing them based on symmetry, on feeling, on what looked right. His fingers moved quickly, almost without thought. The court watched in confusion. His approach made no mathematical sense. But as he worked, the pattern began to simplify. Layers collapsed into each other. The chaos resolved into order. With one final gesture, the entire theorem collapsed into a single elegant geometric shape. A perfect crystal that rotated slowly in the air. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. The Empress leaned forward in her throne, her eyes wide with something that might have been surprise. "Impossible," someone said. "He cannot have solved it. Check the mathematics." Computers hummed to life. Displays flickered. After a moment, a court mathematician stepped forward, his voice shaking slightly. "The solution is valid, Your Majesty. The human has solved the endless theorem." Day turned to face the Empress. He had not calculated anything. He had simply stopped trying to think like a Valaran and started thinking like a human. Pattern recognition, intuition, and a willingness to try something that seemed illogical had led him to the answer. Empress Lyra rose from her throne and descended the steps. The entire court seemed to hold its breath. She walked up to Day, studying him with new interest. "Perhaps I have underestimated your species," she said softly. Then she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for his ears. "I want you in my chambers tonight, human." Day's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He had no idea if this was an honor, a trap, or something else entirely. But he had just proven that humans could surprise the galaxy. He bowed his head. "As you wish, Your Majesty." The Empress smiled, the first real expression he had seen from any Velaran. Then she turned and swept from the hall, leaving Day standing in the center of a room full of aliens who were seeing humanity in a completely new light. The hours until evening passed slowly. Day tried to rest in the quarters provided for the human delegation, but his mind would not stop racing. The other members of his team offered theories about what the Empress wanted, ranging from optimistic to paranoid. None of them really knew. When the summons came, a Velaran guard arrived to escort him alone. They walked through corridors that grew progressively more private and luxurious. Fewer guards, richer decorations, and eventually complete silence, except for their footsteps. The guard stopped at a large door carved with intricate patterns. "The Empress awaits," he said, then walked away without another word. Day stood alone for a moment, then pressed his hand against the door. It slid open silently. The chamber beyond was not what he expected. Instead of a bedroom, he found himself in something closer to a study or war room. Star maps covered the walls. Holographic displays floated in the air showing fleet positions and planetary systems. And in the center of it all sat Empress Lyra at a large desk covered in data tablets. She looked up as he entered. She had removed her crown and formal robes, wearing instead something simpler but still elegant. Without the trappings of office, she looked younger, more approachable, but her eyes were still intense. "Close the door, Day," she said, using his name for the first time. He did as instructed and approached the desk. "Your Majesty, I admit I am confused about why I am here." Lyra stood and walked to one of the star maps. "I need to know if this afternoon was luck or if your species truly thinks differently than mine." She touched the map, and several systems highlighted in red. "The Valaran Empire is at war, though we do not broadcast this fact. Our enemy is the Keth Dominion, and they are winning." Day moved closer to study the map. The Keth controlled a significant portion of space, and the red zones showed recent territorial losses for the Valarans. "We are superior to the Keth in every measurable way," Lyra continued. "Our ships are faster, our weapons more powerful, our tactical computers more advanced, yet we lose battle after battle. Our strategists cannot understand why. They run millions of simulations, and in each one, we should win. But reality disagrees with the simulations." She turned to face him. "I brought you here because I wonder if the same thinking that solved the endless theorem might see what we cannot. This is not about romance or politics, Day. This is about survival. If the Keth continue their advance, the Valaran Empire will fall within a decade." Day felt the weight of what she was asking. She was trusting him, a representative of a species barely known to the galaxy, with her empire's greatest vulnerability. It was either a sign of desperation or genuine belief in human capability. "Show me the battle reports," he said. For the next several hours, they worked together. Lyra brought up engagement after engagement, showing him fleet movements, tactical decisions, and outcomes. Day studied them with a growing sense of understanding. The Valarans fought with perfect logic. Their formations were mathematically optimal. Their targeting priorities were based on threat assessment algorithms. Every decision was calculated to maximize efficiency and minimize risk. And that was the problem. "They know how you think," Day said finally. "The Keth have been fighting you long enough to understand your tactical computers. They know that you will always make the most logical choice, so they create situations where every logical choice leads to a trap." Lyra frowned. "That should be impossible. There are infinite tactical variations." "But you narrow them down using logic which follows rules. Rules can be predicted." Day pointed to one of the battles. "Here, you had 3 options. Option 1 was a direct assault with 60% projected success. Option 2 was a flanking maneuver with 40% success. Option 3 was retreat with complete safety. We chose option 1, naturally, and walked straight into an ambush because the Keth knew you would choose it. They made option 1 look appealing, then prepared for it." Day pulled up another battle. "Same pattern here. And here, every time they are not just fighting your ships, they are fighting your predictability." Lyra sat down heavily. "Then how do we fight them? We cannot abandon logic. It is the foundation of everything we are." "You do not abandon it," Day said. "You add something else to it, something they cannot predict." "What?" "Chaos, intuition, irrationality." He smiled at her confused expression. "Let me tell you about human military history. We have a saying, 'No plan survives contact with the enemy.' We know that logic and planning only take you so far. Sometimes you have to trust your gut, take risks that do not make sense, or do something so unexpected that it seems insane." He pulled up one of the recent Keth victories. "If I were commanding this battle, I would have done something that your tactical computer would never suggest. I would have faked a retreat here, then used the pursuit to spread out their fleet. Then I would have sent a small force to attack this mining station that has no tactical value. The Keth would be confused about why we cared about it and would have to divert forces to defend it, breaking their formation. Then I would have brought the main fleet back and hit them while they were scattered and confused." "That plan has multiple points of failure," Lyra said. "The tactical computer would rate it at less than 30% success." Exactly. Which is why the Keth would never expect it. They are planning for you to take the high percentage option. Hit them with a low percentage option that actually works because it is unexpected, and you change the entire dynamic of the war. Lyra was quiet for a long time, staring at the maps. You are asking my people to fight in a way that goes against our entire nature. I am asking you to learn from humans. We are not as advanced as you, not as logical, not as efficient, but we are survivors. We are adaptable, and we are very good at winning fights we should logically lose. The Empress stood and walked to the window overlooking her city. If I am wrong about you, if I change our entire military doctrine based on the ideas of one human and we fail, it will mean the end of my empire and my people. Yes, Day said honestly. She turned back to him. But if I am right, we might actually survive this war. Yes. Lyra moved back to the desk and activated a communication device. Connect me to Supreme Commander Yuna. A moment later, a holographic image appeared. It showed another Velaran, this one in military armor with a scar across one side of her face. Your Majesty, Yuna said, her voice crisp. It is late for a communication. I have a new strategic advisor, Lyra said. He will be working with you directly on tactical planning. Yuna's expression hardened as Day stepped into view of the hologram. A human? Your Majesty? With respect, this is madness. The madness is continuing to lose battles using the same thinking that has already failed us, Lyra said sharply. You will give this human access to all tactical data. You will consider his suggestions, and you will implement those you find useful. Is that clear, Commander? Yuna's jaw tightened, but she saluted. Yes, Your Majesty. The hologram vanished. Lyra looked at Day with something that might have been hope. Do not make me regret this. I will do my best, Day said. Your best solved a 300-year-old mathematical problem in minutes. I am counting on it being enough to save my people. She moved toward the door, pausing before opening it. You should know, Day, that I am trusting you with something no other species has ever been given access to. Our military secrets, our vulnerabilities, everything. I am doing this because you showed me today that humans see the universe differently than we do. Do not betray that trust. I won't, he promised. As he left the chamber and walked back through the silent halls, Day felt the enormous weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders. He had come to Valara Prime hoping to negotiate a simple trade agreement. Instead, he had somehow become the key to saving an entire empire from destruction. Tomorrow he would have to prove that human thinking could actually win wars, not just solve puzzles. The real test was about to begin. The military command center was a stark contrast to the elegant palace. Everything was functional, built for efficiency rather than beauty. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing real-time data from across the empire. Officers moved between stations with practiced precision, their voices calm even when discussing casualties. Commander Yuna stood in the center of it all, arms crossed, watching Dee approach with obvious skepticism. She was shorter than the Empress, but carried herself with the confidence of someone who had earned her position through combat rather than politics. Human, she said flatly. The Empress has commanded that I give you access to our tactical database. It is ready at Station 7. She pointed to a console in the corner, clearly the least important position in the room. Thank you, Commander, Day said, keeping his voice polite despite her obvious hostility. He settled at the station and began reviewing the data. The more he read, the worse the situation looked. The Keth Dominion had been pushing deeper into Velaran space for 5 years. Every counteroffensive had failed. The Valarans were not just losing, they were being systematically dismantled. A young Valaran officer approached his station. She moved differently than the others, with more curiosity and less rigid formality. I am Science Officer Hana, she said. The commander assigned me to answer any questions you might have about our technology or tactics. Thank you, Hana. Can you tell me about Keth psychology? How do they think? Hana seemed surprised by the question. They are logical, like us, perhaps even more so. They value efficiency above all else. Their society is built on resource optimization and strategic calculation. So they are predictable? In theory, but they have proven better at predicting us than we are at predicting them. Before Day could respond, alarms blared throughout the command center. Officers snapped to attention as new data flooded the displays. Keth fleet detected, someone called out. 12 warships entering Sector 14. They are heading for Mining Colony 17. Commander Yuna strode to the main display. Mining Colony 17 has minimal defenses. Population 3,000. Estimated time until attack, 4 hours. She turned to her tactical officers. Begin evacuation procedures. Deploy 3rd Fleet to intercept. Standard defensive formation Delta 7. Day stood up from his station. Commander, I have a different suggestion. The entire room went quiet. Yuna turned to look at him with barely concealed irritation. The evacuation is already beginning. 3rd Fleet is the optimal response force for this situation. The tactical computer has calculated. That is exactly what the Keth expect you to do, Day interrupted. They have studied your responses. They know you will evacuate and send 3rd Fleet. They are counting on it. Then what would you suggest, human? The way she said human made it clear what she thought of his species. Day walked to the main display and studied the fleet positions. Do not evacuate. Do not send 3rd Fleet. Send 5th Fleet instead, but send them the long way around, through the Vela Nebula. It will take them 6 hours instead of 4. That is insane, Yuna said. The colony will be destroyed before 5th Fleet arrives. No, it will not, because we are going to make the Keth think we abandoned it. We are going to broadcast that the evacuation failed, that ships malfunctioned, that we cannot defend the colony. We are going to let them think they have an easy target. Yuna's eyes narrowed. Explain. The Keth sent 12 warships for a mining colony that should only need 3 to conquer. Why? Because they expect you to defend it, and they want overwhelming force when 3rd Fleet arrives. But if we do not show up, if we seem helpless, what will they do? Hana spoke up, her voice excited. They will get overconfident. They will send some of their ships to pursue other targets while the rest secure the colony. Exactly, Day said. They will split their fleet because they think we are weak and disorganized. Then, when they are scattered and their guard is down, 5th Fleet comes out of the nebula and hits them hard. We turn their trap into ours. The room was silent. Finally, one of the tactical officers spoke. Commander, the computer rates this plan at 28% success. The recommended plan is rated at 65%. Numbers do not tell the whole story, Day said. Your 65% plan is exactly what failed in the last 20 engagements. This 28% plan is something the Keth will not expect. Yuna stared at the display for a long moment. Day could see the conflict on her face. Everything in her training told her to trust the computer, to follow the logical path. But the logical path had been failing for 5 years. Commander, Hana said quietly, perhaps it is time to try something different. Yuna closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with decision. Fine, we will do it the humans' way, but if this fails, if those 3,000 colonists die, their blood is on your hands, Day. Understood, Day said. The next 6 hours were among the most stressful of Day's life. They broadcast false emergency messages about evacuation failures. They repositioned 3rd Fleet to look like they were preparing to defend a different colony. They sent 5th Fleet on the long route through the nebula, where Keth sensors could not track them. And they waited. The Keth fleet arrived at Mining Colony 17 exactly on schedule. Day watched the displays as the enemy ships scanned for defending forces and found none. The colonists were hiding in reinforced shelters, their power signatures minimal. "Keth fleet is holding position," an officer reported. "They appear confused by the lack of resistance." "Wait for it," Day said. Minutes passed. Then, just as he had predicted, the Keth fleet split. 6 ships stayed to secure the colony. 6 ships moved off toward other targets, confident they had the situation under control. "Now," Day said. Fifth Fleet exploded out of the Vela Nebula like an avenging storm. The Keth ships at the colony barely had time to raise shields before Valaran weapons tore into them. Without their full force, without time to coordinate, the Keth were overwhelmed. The 6 Keth ships that had left rushed back to help, but they were too late and too disorganized. Fifth Fleet picked them off one by one, using the chaos and confusion to devastating effect. In 47 minutes, all 12 Keth warships were destroyed or disabled. Fifth Fleet had taken minimal damage. Not a single colonist had died. The command center erupted in shocked celebration. Officers who normally showed no emotion were smiling, some even cheering. It was the first clean victory the Valarans had achieved in months. Commander Yuna walked over to Day's station. Her expression was unreadable. For a moment, Day thought she might still be angry. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She bowed to him. Not a small nod, but a deep, formal bow of respect. "I was wrong about you, human," she said. "That was the most brilliant piece of tactical thinking I have seen in my entire career. You saved 3,000 lives today and proved that your species has much to teach us." Day felt a wave of relief wash over him. "We won because your people executed the plan perfectly, Commander. The credit belongs to all of us." Yuna straightened. "Perhaps. But the idea was yours, and that makes all the difference." She turned to address the room. "Let this be a lesson to all of you. The humans showed us that victory does not always lie in the highest probability outcome. Sometimes we must take risks, must trust in strategies that seem illogical, in order to achieve something our enemies do not expect." Hana approached with a smile. "You have just changed the entire future of this war. News of this victory will spread throughout the fleet. Everyone will want to know about the human who outthought the Keth." "I just hope I can do it again," Day said. "You will," Yuna said with certainty. "Because from now on, you are not just an advisor. You are part of this command team. Your insights, your human way of thinking, that is exactly what we need to turn this war around." As the celebration continued around him, Day felt a strange mix of pride and fear. He had proven that humans could contribute something valuable to the galaxy. He had shown that humanity's different perspective was not a weakness, but a strength. But now expectations were high. The Empress was counting on him. Commander Yuna was counting on him. 3,000 colonists were alive because of him, but how many more lives would depend on his decisions in the battles to come? He looked at the star map showing Keth territory. This was just one small victory in a much larger war. The real challenge was still ahead. But for the first time since arriving on Valara Prime, Day felt like humanity truly belonged among the stars, and he was determined to prove it again and again, for as long as it took. 3 weeks after the victory at Mining Colony 17, Day found himself walking the halls of the Valaran Palace once again. This time, he was not a nervous diplomat hoping for a trade agreement. He wore the insignia of a strategic advisor to the Empress, and Valaran officers actually saluted him as he passed. The change in status had come with benefits and dangers. The military respected him now, especially after 2 more successful engagements using tactics that defied conventional Velaran thinking. But the political court was a different matter entirely. "You have been summoned to the council chamber," Hana said, catching up to him in the corridor. She had become something of a friend over the past weeks, her scientific curiosity making her more open to human ideas than most Valarans. Lord Taven has called for a formal debate about your position. Day had known this was coming. Lord Taven was one of the most powerful nobles in the Empire, a traditionalist who believed that Valarans should never rely on other species for anything important. He had been vocally opposed to Day's growing influence from the beginning. What exactly is he challenging? Day asked. Everything. Your authority, your methods, and most importantly, the Empress's judgment in trusting you. He has significant support among the older noble houses. They see you as a threat to Valaran superiority. The council chamber was a massive circular room with seating for hundreds. It was already filled when Day arrived. Nobles in elaborate robes occupied the upper tiers, while military officers and government officials filled the lower sections. At the center was a raised platform where speakers would present their arguments. Empress Lyra sat on a throne overlooking it all, her expression neutral. Commander Yuna stood nearby, her jaw tight with barely contained anger. She had wanted to defend Day herself, but the rules of formal debate required that the person being challenged speak for themselves. Lord Taven was already on the platform when Day entered. He was an older Valaran with silver skin and cold eyes. His robes marked him as one of the highest-ranking nobles in the Empire, someone whose family had held power for generations. "Ah, the human arrives," Taven said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "How gracious of him to attend a debate about whether he should be allowed to continue influencing our empire's military strategy." Day climbed onto the platform, keeping his expression calm. "I am here to answer any concerns the council might have, Lord Taven." "Concerns?" Taven laughed. "I have more than concerns. I have evidence that you are a danger to our empire." He gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing casualty reports. "Since you began advising our military, Valaran casualties have increased by 18%. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Day felt his stomach sink. He had not seen those numbers. "You neglect to mention that our victory rate has increased by 42%, Commander Yuna called out from her position. "Or that we have reclaimed 3 star systems in the same period." "Victory means nothing if we lose our people to achieve it," Taven countered. "The humans' reckless tactics may win battles, but they cost Valaran lives, lives that would have been saved using our traditional methods." "Traditional methods that were losing the war," Hana said, standing up in the gallery. "Before Day arrived, we were in retreat on every front." Taven's eyes narrowed. "Science Officer Hana, you have become quite the advocate for human thinking. Perhaps you have forgotten that you are Valaran, not human. Our way has sustained this empire for thousands of years. We do not need primitives teaching us how to fight." Day took a breath and stepped forward. "Lord Taven is correct that casualties have increased. I will not deny that. Human tactics involve more risk, and risk sometimes means losses, but we must look at the larger picture." He activated his own display, showing strategic maps of the war. "Before I arrived, the Valaran Empire was losing an average of 1 colony every 2 months. In the 3 weeks since implementing new tactics, you have lost 0 colonies and reclaimed 3. Yes, some battles have cost lives. But how many more lives would be lost if entire colonies fell to the Keth?" "Pretty words," Taven said. "But you are asking us to abandon logic, to embrace chaos and irrationality. That is not the Valaran way, and I question the Empress's judgment in allowing an outsider to corrupt our military doctrine." The chamber went completely silent. Challenging the Empress's judgment directly was a bold move, one that bordered on treason. Lyra's expression did not change, but Day saw her hands tighten on the arms of her throne. "My judgment," Lyra said coldly, "is not the subject of this debate. But it should be, Your Majesty. Taven said, bowing but not backing down. You have given tremendous power to someone we barely know. A human who appeared weeks ago and now commands the respect of our military officers. What do we really know about his motives? How do we know he is not manipulating you for Earth's benefit? That is ridiculous, Yuna said. Day has proven himself repeatedly. Has he? Or has he simply been lucky? Taven turned to address the full council. Valarans, I ask you to think logically. This human solves one mathematical puzzle and suddenly he is trusted with our military secrets. He wins a few battles and we abandon thousands of years of tactical doctrine. This is not wisdom. This is desperation making us foolish. More murmurs of agreement this time. Day could see that Taven's words were resonating with many in the chamber. They wanted to believe in Valaran superiority, and accepting help from a younger species wounded their pride. Day knew he had to shift the argument. Pure logic would not work here because this was not really about logic. It was about fear and pride. Lord Taven, he said, you say that accepting human help is a sign of weakness. I say it is a sign of strength. How can depending on others be strength? Because true strength is knowing when you need help and being brave enough to accept it. The Valaran Empire could have continued using the same tactics that were failing, hoping that eventually something would change. Instead, Empress Lyra had the courage to try something new. That is not weakness. That is the mark of a great leader. He turned to address the council directly. You speak of Valaran superiority, and in many ways, you are superior. Your technology is centuries ahead of Earth's. Your civilization has achieved things humanity can only dream of. But every species has blind spots. You are so focused on logic that you sometimes miss solutions that do not fit neat mathematical models. Humans are not superior to you. We are different, and that difference has value. Different, Taven scoffed. A polite way of saying primitive. No, different as in complementary. You have strengths we lack, and we have strengths you lack. Together, we achieve things neither could alone. That is not corruption of Valaran culture. That is evolution. Day walked to the edge of the platform. I understand your fear. You have been the dominant power in this region of space for so long that the idea of learning from a younger species feels wrong. But the universe does not care about pride. The Keth do not care about your traditions. They will destroy you if you let pride prevent you from adapting. He paused, looking around the chamber. I am not asking you to stop being Valaran. I am asking you to add human perspective to your existing strengths. Keep your logic, your technology, your discipline, but also embrace creativity, intuition, and the willingness to take calculated risks. That combination is what will win this war. The chamber was quiet. Day could not tell if his words had made any impact. Then Hana stood again. I vote to maintain Day's position as strategic advisor, she said clearly. One by one, other voices joined hers. Military officers who had seen the victories firsthand. Younger nobles who were tired of losing. Even some traditionalists who could not argue with results. Taven's face darkened as the votes stacked against him. Finally, Empress Lyra stood. The council has spoken. Day will remain as my strategic advisor with full authority. This debate is concluded. She looked directly at Taven. And Lord Taven, if you question my judgment again in such a public forum, we will have a very different conversation about your position in this court. Taven bowed stiffly and left the platform without another word. As the council dispersed, Yuna approached Day with a slight smile. You argued like a warrior, using words instead of weapons. I am impressed. I just told the truth, Day said, feeling drained. The truth is often the most powerful weapon, Hana added. Though I think you made an enemy today. Taven is not someone who forgets a slight. Later that evening, Day met with Empress Lyra in her private study. She looked tired, the weight of leadership evident in her eyes. You handled yourself well today, she said. Better than I expected. Thank you, Your Majesty. Though I suspect this is not over. No, she agreed. Taven represents a significant faction that fears change. They will continue to work against you, against us. You must be careful. Day nodded. I will be, but I will not stop doing what I believe is right. Lyra smiled faintly. That is what I hoped you would say. You know, when I first took the throne, I was young and inexperienced. The council doubted me constantly. I had to prove myself over and over. I see something of myself in you, Day. Someone trying to do good while facing those who resist change. It is harder than I thought it would be, Day admitted. The things worth doing usually are. She walked to the window. But you gave them something today that I could not. Hope. The military respects you because you win battles. But the people are starting to respect you because you showed them that being Valaran does not mean being alone. That strength can come from unity rather than isolation. As Day left the palace that night, he knew the political battle was far from over. But he also knew he had allies now, people who believed in what he was trying to accomplish. The war against the Keth continued, but perhaps an equally important war was being fought in the hearts and minds of the Valaran people. A war between the comfort of tradition and the uncertainty of change. And Day was determined to win both. The alert came in the middle of the night. Day was pulled from sleep by the urgent chime of his communication device. Commander Yuna's face appeared on the screen, her expression grim. Get to the command center immediately. We have a situation. Day dressed quickly and ran through the empty palace corridors. When he burst into the command center, he found it in controlled chaos. Every station was occupied, displays showing tactical data that made his blood run cold. What happened? He asked. Yuna pointed to the main display. The Keth have launched their largest offensive yet. 43 warships heading directly for Valara Prime. They will be here in 18 hours. Day stared at the numbers. 43 ships was more than the Keth had ever committed to a single battle. It was nearly a third of their entire known fleet. How many ships can we get here in time? He asked. 28, Yuna said. We are pulling every available vessel from surrounding systems, but it will not be enough. Even with our defensive platforms, we are outnumbered and outgunned. Empress Lyra entered the command center, still wearing her sleeping robes, but with her crown firmly in place. Report. Yuna repeated the situation. Lyra listened without expression, but Day could see the tension in her shoulders. If Valara Prime fell, the Empire would collapse. Everything they had been fighting for would be lost. Day, Lyra said quietly, I need one of your miracles. He turned back to the displays, his mind racing. This was different from the previous battles. Those had been tactical engagements where surprise and unconventional thinking could overcome superior numbers. But this was a direct assault on the homeworld with overwhelming force. As he studied the Keth fleet composition and approach vector, something bothered him. He pulled up data from previous engagements, comparing attack patterns and strategies. This does not make sense, he muttered. What do you mean? Hana asked, coming to stand beside him. The Keth are logical, right? They calculate odds and risks just like you do. So why would they commit this many ships to an attack when they cannot be certain of victory? Even outnumbering us, assaulting a defended homeworld is incredibly risky. They should know that. Yuna frowned. Perhaps they are confident they can win. Or perhaps they have learned from us, Day said slowly, a terrible realization forming. We have been using unpredictable tactics against them for weeks. What if they studied those battles? What if they are now applying human-style thinking to their own strategy? He pulled up the tactical data from their recent victories, his fingers moving frantically across the controls. Look at this. Every battle we won, we did something unexpected. We feinted, we bluffed, we took risks. The Keth have been analyzing that. They have been learning to think like humans. The room went silent as the implications sank in. If that is true, Yuna said carefully, then this attack might not be what it appears. It could be a feint, a bluff, just like the tactics we used against them. But we cannot take that risk, another officer said. If we assume it is a feint and we are wrong, Valara Prime falls. Day closed his eyes, thinking hard. The Keth had turned his own weapons against him. They were using human unpredictability combined with their superior numbers. It was brilliant and terrifying. We need more information, he said. Hana, is there any way to determine if this is their entire committed force, or if they have reserves waiting? Hana worked at her station for several minutes. Long-range sensors show unusual activity in the Keth frontier systems. It could be more ships gathering, or it could be normal fleet movements. There is no way to be certain. Day looked at the timer counting down to the Keth arrival. 17 hours now. Not enough time to call for reinforcements from the outer systems. Not enough time to evacuate the planet's billions of inhabitants. We need to split their focus, he said suddenly. The Keth are using our own tactics, but they are still learning. They do not have centuries of human military history to draw from. We need to do something so unexpected, so seemingly insane, that even their new way of thinking cannot account for it. What do you propose? Lyra asked. Day took a deep breath. We send a strike force to attack their homeworld. The command center erupted in protests. Yuna held up a hand for silence, her eyes locked on Day. Explain. The Keth are counting on us defending Valara Prime with everything we have. It is the logical choice, but what if we do the opposite? What if we take our fastest ships, load them with our best troops, and send them to attack the Keth homeworld while their fleet is here? That is suicide, an officer said. We would be leaving Valara Prime even more vulnerable. Not if the Keth panic, Day countered. Think about it. They commit their fleet to attacking our homeworld, and suddenly we attack theirs. They will have to make a choice. Continue the attack and risk losing their own planet, or turn back to defend it. Either way, we break their momentum and even the odds. Yuna was already running calculations. It would have to be a small force, fast ships only, and they would need to arrive at the Keth homeworld at the same time the Keth fleet arrives here to have maximum psychological impact. It would also need to be a real threat, Hana added. Not just a feint. We would have to commit enough force to actually do damage. Dai turned to Yuna. How many ships could we send while still maintaining a credible defense here? 5, maybe 6 at most. Against whatever defenses the Keth have left behind, that is not enough to conquer their homeworld. It does not have to conquer it. It just has to threaten it. Make them afraid, make them doubt, make them choose between offense and defense. Day looked at each person in the command center. We have been teaching them to think like humans. Now we show them what that really means. Humans do not just defend when cornered. We attack. Empress Lyra stepped forward. Who would lead this strike force? Before anyone could answer, a new voice spoke from the doorway. I will. Everyone turned to see June, the leader of the human security detail that had accompanied Day to Valara Prime. He was a former Earth military officer, one of the few humans with actual combat experience among the diplomatic team. This is exactly the kind of mission humans train for, June continued, walking into the room. High risk, low probability of success, maximum impact if we pull it off. Give me 5 ships and whatever Valaran troops are crazy enough to volunteer, and I will make the Keth regret coming after your homeworld. Day felt a surge of pride mixed with fear. June was volunteering for what might be a suicide mission. But he was right. If anyone could pull off something this audacious, it would be someone with human military experience. I will go too, Hana said suddenly. Absolutely not, Yuna said immediately. You are a science officer, not a combat soldier. And this mission will need someone who understands Keth technology and defensive systems, Hana countered. Someone who can identify high-value targets and exploit weaknesses. That is me. Day saw the determination in her eyes. She had become more than just curious about humans over the past weeks. She had started to think like them, to value the same things they did, including the willingness to take crazy risks for the greater good. Very well, Lyra said. Commander Yuna, select the ships and crews for the strike force. June will command with Hana as technical advisor. They launch in 3 hours. She turned to Day. And you will coordinate both battles from here. The defense of Valara Prime and the attack on the Keth homeworld must be perfectly timed. The next hours passed in a blur of preparation. Day watched as 5 of the Valaran fleet's fastest ships were loaded with troops and weapons. June organized the assault team, a mix of human security personnel and Velaran soldiers, who volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a one-way trip. Before they departed, June came to say goodbye to Day. If this works, you will be a legend, Day said. June smiled. If this works, I will be too dead to enjoy it. But that is okay. This is what humans do, right? We see an impossible situation and we charge at it anyway. That is our whole thing. Try to come back alive, Day said. That is also our thing. Surviving against the odds. I will do my best. June gripped his shoulder. And Day, if we do not make it, make sure everyone knows we did this to protect our new friends. The Valarans might be uptight and obsessed with logic, but they are good people. They deserve to survive this war. The strike force launched on schedule, disappearing into faster-than-light travel toward the Keth homeworld. Day returned to the command center to coordinate the defense of Valara Prime. As the Keth fleet approached, Day could only hope that his plan would work, that June and his team would reach the Keth homeworld in time, that the enemy would value their own planet enough to pull back. It was a crazy plan that depended on psychology, timing, and luck. In other words, it was a very human plan, and now they would see if teaching the Keth to think like humans would be their salvation or their doom. The timer continued counting down. 13 hours until the Keth arrived. 13 hours until they would know if humanity's way of war could truly save an empire. The command center was tense as the final hours ticked away. Day stood at the main tactical display, watching 2 separate countdowns. One showed the Keth fleet approaching Valara Prime, the other showed June's strike force approaching the Keth homeworld. The timing had to be perfect. If June arrived too early, the Keth fleet would have time to send reinforcements back home and still attack Valara Prime. Too late, and the psychological impact would be lost. Keth fleet will enter weapons range in 47 minutes, an officer reported. Strike force will arrive at the Keth homeworld in 49 minutes, another added. 2 minutes. Everything depended on a 2-minute window. Commander Yuna moved beside Day. The defensive platforms are ready. All ships are in position. If the Keth do not turn back, we will give them the fight of their lives. They will turn back, Day said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. They have to. Empress Lyra entered the command center dressed in full ceremonial armor. If this was to be the final battle, she would face it as a warrior queen. Day noticed that many of the Valoran officers straightened when they saw her, drawing strength from her presence. As the minutes crawled by, Day found himself thinking about everything that had led to this moment. He had come to Valara Prime hoping to negotiate a simple trade agreement. Instead, he had become the architect of a desperate gambit that might save or doom an entire civilization. 30 minutes to contact, the tactical officer called out. Day's communication device chimed. It was Hana, transmitting from the strike force. Her image appeared, looking nervous but determined. We are approaching the Keth homeworld. Defenses are lighter than expected. Either they really did commit most of their fleet to the attack on you, or this is a trap. It does not matter which, Day said. Make as much noise as possible. We need them to see you as a credible threat. Understood. And Day, whatever happens, thank you for showing us that there are different ways to be strong. The Valarans needed to learn that. The transmission ended. Day turned back to the main display, his hands gripping the console edge. 20 minutes to contact. The Keth fleet was massive on the sensors, a wall of firepower bearing down on Valara Prime. The Valaran defensive fleet looked small by comparison, though Day knew they would fight with everything they had. Then something unexpected happened. "Sir," an officer said urgently, "I am detecting unusual communication patterns from within the palace. Encrypted transmissions using non-standard protocols." Yuna moved to investigate. "Trace the source." "It is coming from the council chambers. Multiple sources, all transmitting to—" "Wait." The officer's face went pale. "They are transmitting to the Keth fleet." The command center went dead silent. Day felt his stomach drop. "Lock down those transmissions immediately," Lyra commanded. "Security teams to the council chambers, now." But it was too late. The damage was done. On the tactical display, Day could see the Keth fleet adjusting its approach vector slightly, moving to avoid the defensive positions that should have been secret. "Someone has been feeding them our defensive plans," Yuna said, her voice shaking with rage. "Our own people have betrayed us." Lyra's face was a mask of fury. "I want everyone in those chambers arrested, everyone. We will sort out the innocent from the guilty later." As security forces rushed to comply, Day's mind was racing. The conspiracy made terrible sense. Lord Taven and his faction had opposed everything Day represented. If they could not remove him through political means, they would remove the entire empire by helping the Keth win. 10 minutes to contact." An urgent message came through from the security team. "Your Majesty, the council chambers are sealed. The conspirators have activated the palace defense shields. They have taken hostages." "How many?" Lyra demanded. "At least 30 nobles and staff, and they are saying they will only negotiate with you directly." Day could see the impossible choice forming. Lyra was needed in the command center to coordinate the defense, but she was also the only one who might be able to resolve the hostage situation without casualties. "I will go," Day said suddenly. "Absolutely not," Yuna said. "You are needed here. The fleet knows what to do. You can command the defense as well as I can, maybe better. But those conspirators see me as the source of all their problems. Maybe I can use that, distract them, keep them talking until security can breach the shields." Lyra studied him for a moment. "Very well, but take a security team. And Day, be careful. These people have already betrayed everything they should hold sacred. They will not hesitate to kill you." Day ran through the palace corridors with 4 Valaran guards. They reached the council chambers to find the massive doors sealed and shielded. He could see figures moving inside through the small observation windows. He activated the intercom. "This is Day. I am here as requested. Let me in." After a moment, the shields dropped just enough for the door to crack open. "You only. No guards." Day nodded to the security team and stepped through. The door sealed behind him immediately. Inside, he found Lord Taven standing in the center of a group of nobles, all armed with energy weapons. Hostages sat along the walls looking terrified. Taven smiled when he saw Day. "The human who ruined everything. How fitting that you should be here for the end." "You are helping the Keth destroy your own people," Day said. "Why?" "Because you left us no choice," Taven snarled. "You corrupted the Empress, turned her against our ways, made her trust aliens over her own kind. Better to fall to the Keth than to become a mongrel empire that values primitives over Velarans." "That is insane," Day said. "The Keth will not preserve Velaran culture. They will destroy it completely." "Perhaps. But at least we will fall as Valarans, not as your pets." Taven gestured with his weapon. The Keth fleet knows our defensive positions now. They will break through, and this empire will finally be cleansed of your influence. Day needed to buy time. Through the chamber windows, he could see security teams setting up equipment to breach the shields. What happens to you when the Keth win? Do you think they will reward you? I do not care. Some prices are worth paying. From Day's communication device, he heard Yuna's voice. 5 minutes to contact. Strike Force has engaged the Keth homeworld. Taven heard it too and laughed. Your suicide mission. The Keth left enough defenses behind to deal with a handful of ships. Your friends are dying for nothing. But Day saw something in Taven's eyes. Uncertainty. The conspirator had committed everything to this moment, and now he was starting to wonder if he had made a mistake. You know what I think? Day said. I think you are scared. Not of me, not of humans, but of change itself. The universe is evolving, species are learning to work together, and you cannot handle it because it makes you feel obsolete. Quiet! Taven raised his weapon. You betrayed your own people because your pride matters more to you than their survival. That is not strength, Taven. That is cowardice. The words hit their mark. Taven's face twisted with rage, and he fired. But Day had been watching, had been ready. He dove to the side as the energy blast scorched the air where he had been standing. At the same moment, the windows exploded inward as security forces breached from outside. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Some of the conspirators fired at the security teams. Others tried to run. Hostages screamed and dove for cover. Day scrambled behind a desk as energy weapons lit up the room. Commander Yuna came through the breach like an avenging storm, her weapon cutting down conspirators with precise shots. Other security forces moved to protect the hostages. Taven tried to reach the door, but Day threw himself at the noble's legs, bringing him down. They struggled on the floor, Taven's superior strength almost overwhelming Day, until Yuna stunned the conspirator with a neural disruptor. Secure all prisoners, Yuna ordered as the fighting ended. Get medical teams for the injured. She helped Day to his feet. That was incredibly foolish and also incredibly brave. How much time? Day gasped. 2 minutes to contact. We need to get back to command. They ran back through the halls, arriving just as the Keth fleet entered weapons range. The Velaran defensive fleet engaged, and space erupted with weapons fire. But something was wrong. The Keth attack was hesitant, unfocused. Their fleet was not pressing the advantage, despite knowing the defensive positions. Then the communication officer called out, Message from the Keth flagship. They are requesting a ceasefire. Everyone in the command center froze. Lyra stepped forward. On screen, a Keth commander appeared, his insectoid features twisted with what might have been distress. Velaran Empress, we are withdrawing our forces. Your attack on our homeworld has caused significant damage. We require time to reassess our position. Strike Force reports successful hits on 3 major Keth installations, another officer reported. June is reporting light casualties and requests permission to continue the attack. Lyra looked at Day. He knew what she was asking. They could press the advantage, could maybe even cripple the Keth permanently. But it would cost lives, including June and Hana. Call them back, Day said quietly. They have done enough. Lyra nodded and gave the order. The Keth fleet began its withdrawal, and the Velaran forces held their fire. As the danger passed, Day felt his legs go weak. They had won. The gambit had worked. The conspiracy had failed. Valara Prime was safe. Empress Lyra addressed the command center. Today, we faced betrayal from within and invasion from without. We survived because of courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to trust in new ways of thinking. Let this day be remembered as the turning point when the Velaran Empire learned that strength comes not from isolation, but from unity. As the officers celebrated, Day thought about June and the others who had risked everything. They would be coming home as heroes, having proven once again that humanity had earned its place among the stars. But the cost had been high. The conspiracy had shaken the Empire to its core. Rebuilding trust would take time. Still, they had survived. And sometimes, that was enough. 3 months had passed since the battle for Valara Prime. The Empire was different now, changed in ways both obvious and subtle. Day stood at the observation deck of the palace, looking out over the city that had become his second home. The crystalline towers still gleamed in the purple sky, but now there were new structures being built, designed with a blend of Valaran precision and human creativity. The door opened behind him. He did not need to turn to know it was Empress Lyra. He had learned to recognize the soft whisper of her footsteps. "Lost in thought?" she asked, coming to stand beside him. "Just reflecting on how much has changed," Day said. "When I first arrived, this place felt cold and alien. Now it feels like home." "You have made it your home," Lyra said. "And in doing so, you have changed it for the better. The reforms we discussed are being implemented across the Empire. Valaran academies are now teaching human philosophy alongside traditional logic. Our military officers study Earth's military history. Children learn that different does not mean inferior." Day smiled. "I heard some of the schools are even teaching improvisation and creative thinking. A few months ago, that would have been considered corrupting Valaran youth. A few months ago, I was a different leader. We were a different empire." Lyra's expression grew serious. "The conspiracy trials concluded yesterday. Taven and 17 others were found guilty of treason. They will spend the rest of their lives in exile on a remote mining colony." "Harsh, but fair," Day said. "They nearly destroyed everything." "They were afraid," Lyra said quietly. "Afraid of change, afraid of losing what they thought made us special. I almost pity them. They will live long enough to see the empire they tried to preserve thrive precisely because it embraced the changes they feared." Movement in the sky caught Day's attention. A ship was approaching, its design sleeker than standard Valaran vessels. It landed on the palace platform, and a figure emerged that made Day's heart lift. June walked across the platform, his arm in a regenerative cast, but otherwise looking healthy. Behind him came Hana and the other members of the strike force. They had been recovering at a military hospital, but Day had not expected them back so soon. He ran to meet them, embracing June carefully to avoid his injured arm. "You are supposed to be resting." "Resting is boring," June said with a grin. "Besides, I heard you are leaving today. Could not let you go without saying goodbye properly." "Leaving?" Hana asked, her eyes wide. "You are returning to Earth?" Day nodded. "My mission here is complete. The trade agreements are signed. The military exchange programs are established. Humanity and the Valaran Empire are officially allies. It is time for me to go home." He saw the disappointment on Hana's face and felt a pang of sadness himself. Over the past months, she had become more than a colleague. She was a friend, someone who shared his curiosity about the universe and his belief that different cultures made each other stronger. "The Empire will miss you," Hana said quietly. "I will miss it too," Day admitted. "But Earth needs to hear everything I have learned, and there are other humans eager to come here, to study, to teach, to continue building the bridges we started." Commander Yuna arrived, her military bearing as sharp as ever, but with a warmth in her eyes that had not been there when they first met. "So the human who changed everything is running away. Typical." Day laughed. "Not running, just moving to the next challenge." "I know," Yuna said. "And I have news that might interest you. The Empress has appointed me as the first Valaran ambassador to Earth. I will be accompanying you on your journey home." "Really?" Day could not hide his surprise. "You are willing to leave Valara Prime?" "Someone must ensure that humans learn proper military discipline," Yuna said with a slight smile. "Besides, you showed me that the universe is larger and more interesting than I believed. It is time I explored it. Empress Lyra joined the group, her presence causing everyone to bow respectfully. Walk with me, Day. They strolled through the palace gardens, a place where geometric Valaran design met the organic chaos of plants imported from a dozen worlds. It was a perfect symbol of what the Empire was becoming. I have something for you, Lyra said, producing a small box. Inside was a medal, the highest honor the Valaran Empire could bestow. It was made of a rare metal that seemed to shift colors as it caught the light. The Star of Unity, Lyra explained. It has only been given to 12 individuals in our entire history, all Valarans who changed the course of our civilization. You are the first non-Valaran to receive it. Day held the medal, feeling the weight of history in his hands. Your Majesty, I do not know what to say. Say nothing. Simply remember that you will always have a place here. These chambers, this palace, this empire, they are as much yours as they are mine. You proved that a human could not only survive among us, but could lead us to be better than we were. She pinned the medal to his uniform herself. When you first arrived, I whispered those words to you because I wanted to test you, to see if you were truly different. I got my answer. You were different in ways I could not have imagined. You taught us that strength comes in many forms: logic and creativity, precision and intuition, tradition and innovation. We are stronger now because we embrace all of it. You would have found that path eventually, Day said. I just helped you get there a bit faster. Perhaps, but I like to think we helped each other. Lyra looked out over her empire. The Keth have requested formal peace negotiations. They were impressed by our willingness to attack their homeworld in defense of ours. They see us as worthy opponents now, worthy of respect rather than conquest. That is excellent news. It is. And it is partly because they saw humans and Valarans working together. They realized that the galaxy is changing, that old certainties no longer apply. Adaptation is the key to survival, and you taught us how to adapt while remaining true to ourselves. They walked back to where the others waited. A crowd had gathered, news of Day's departure having spread through the palace. Valaran officers, nobles, scientists, and common workers all came to say goodbye to the human who had changed their world. One by one, they approached to offer thanks and well wishes. Some brought gifts. Others simply wanted to shake his hand, a human gesture that had become popular among Valarans. Each interaction reminded Day of the connections he had built, the lives he had touched. Finally, it was time to board the ship. The human delegation, now expanded to include cultural attachés and military liaisons, was already aboard. Yuna stood at the ramp, waiting patiently. Day turned for one last look at Valara Prime. The purple sky, the crystalline towers, the geometric perfection that had once seemed so alien and now felt so familiar. You will come back, Hana said confidently. I know you will. Of course I will, Day said. This is my second home now, and besides, someone needs to make sure you do not forget everything I taught you about creative problem solving. June clasped his shoulder. You did good, Day. Really good. Humanity's first real mark on the galaxy, and you made it a positive one. Earth will be proud. We will all be proud, Empress Lyra said. Go home, Day. Tell your people about us. Tell them that the Valaran Empire welcomes them as equals and friends. Tell them that the galaxy is vast, but it is less lonely than it once was. Day bowed deeply, the Valaran gesture of respect that he had learned to perform perfectly. Then he turned and walked up the ramp. As the ship lifted off, he watched through the viewport as Valara Prime grew smaller. But he did not feel sadness. Instead, he felt pride and hope. Pride in what had been accomplished, hope for what would come next. Yuna sat down beside him. Nervous about going home? A little, Day admitted. I left Earth as a minor diplomat hoping to make a trade deal. I am returning as someone who helped win a war and forge an alliance between species. That is going to take some getting used to." "You will adapt," Yuna said. "It is what humans do best, I have learned. You adapt, you improvise, you overcome. It is both your greatest strength and most infuriating quality." Day laughed. "Coming from you, I will take that as a compliment." As the ship entered faster-than-light travel, Day thought about everything that awaited him on Earth. Debriefings, celebrations, interviews, and eventually new assignments. Other diplomats would come to Valara Prime, continuing the work he started. Other humans would learn from the Valarans, and Valarans would learn from humans. But he also thought about the future. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species and civilizations. Humanity was just beginning to explore it, just starting to find its place among the stars. And if Day's experience on Valara Prime had taught him anything, it was that humanity had much to offer. Not superior technology or greater strength, but a different way of seeing problems, a willingness to take risks, and a belief that working together was better than standing alone. The Valaran Empire had learned those lessons and become stronger for it. Other civilizations would learn them too in time. Day touched the Star of Unity medal on his uniform and smiled. Somewhere behind him was a purple-skied world that had become his second home. Somewhere ahead was the blue marble that was his first. And between them, across the vast darkness of space, was a bridge of understanding and friendship that would never be broken. The human had come to the stars and found not enemies or servants, but equals, friends, allies. And that, Day thought, was the greatest achievement of all. The ship raced toward Earth, carrying news that would change humanity's future. The age of isolation was over. The age of unity had begun. And in the chamber of an alien empress, a place would always wait for the human who had changed everything. Not as a subordinate, not as a curiosity, but as an equal and a friend. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be.